Hello, hello! We've had a recent influx of perverts, I'm not sure why. So I figured it was time to strike while the iron was hot, as it were. And we'll draw Rouge today. Because that's topical, isn't it? Yes. Alright, so to that end, I thought I would do first, if you're not aware of this, actually at the very end of my cartoon, I said that I really appreciate the fact that I hear from you guys that I made your lives better in some way. Which, of course, lots of people that were just seeing me for the first time had no idea what I'm talking about. I'm talking mainly about the art gripes, which is what this sort of video and this sort of format actually is. Which is sort of a life lesson sort of video, usually, in the guise of being about furry fat bait. Yes, it's a complicated format, I know. Just go with me here. Alright, so I'm gonna draw today something that I've already drawn today, actually, and that is this picture, which is a minor Rouge redesign, which itself, actually, let me close this one, which itself is actually a sort of inspired by design of this picture, which I think I tracked this down is by a user that goes by Rollin' Rabbits on Twitter and Tumblr, I believe. I think that's correct. Now, it's the internet, so sue me if I got that wrong. But I've always really liked this particular image. I think this is super cute, really like the general style and everything. The idea of actually eliminating the weird Caucasian lady meat that's like here and all across her body, I would love to do that because that's so weird. Like, that always struck me as being bizarre. I know you're just like, oh, you just want to be more furry. And yes, my normal viewers do sound exactly like that. My personal experience, I know that to be true. But no, I just like the idea of getting rid of that. So that was an idea I've always had, and then I saw the redesign, it's like, oh, someone already did it. So that worked out great. So this is sort of... It's sort of almost the exact same thing. So I'm sort of ripping it off, but I'm not ripping it off. Because, you know, obviously it's completely different style, did a lot more of a redesign and whatnot. But it's sort of a combination of that and this image, actually. Which I believe is official art. And it's from a game that I'm not aware of because I don't actually care about Sonic. Which I'm sure you're going to learn all about in the post-commentary as I rant about absolutely nothing. Yes, yes, oh, I love the post-commentary. But you guys get the idea. I just like the general idea, so I decided to draw it. So if you're an artist, you definitely should recognize that feeling of, ooh, I like this thing, I'm going to draw it. Because you just want to have the experience of drawing the thing. Which, for a non-artist, probably sounds very strange. But anyways, alright. I wanted to show off first, the reason why I'm doing this pre-commentary, the reason why I'm doing this pre-commentary is because I wanted to sort of show off the draft process. And if you're like me, the draft process is probably the longest stage in the drawing, so you're not going to see the whole thing in active time or anything like that. We're not going to be doing that. I merely just want to show you how long it can take, and not to be overly committed to anything. Like, this was the original, the draft that I drew for that image. Obviously much simpler. Even this one, I think, took probably like an hour, because I was not really feeling it today. And it took me a while to get this one just so. So, it's a big jump, and I sort of wanted to give you a rough idea of what that feels like. Alright. And I've actually already sort of done this video once before, but I came across more information, like I tracked down the source of that picture, and I wanted to make sure I mentioned it. So I decided to start over. Behind the scenes. Yes. Yes! Alright. So, first course of action, I will not purport to be like Michelangelo or anything, and stare at the marble until the statue forms itself in my mind, and I just realize its true image or anything like that. But I will say that whenever you're looking at a blank canvas, that is very normal, and you're just sort of staring, sort of imagining what it can be. That's normally how I do it. And it just takes me a while to sort of figure out, okay, I sort of want something to look like this. It takes a while to get to that stage. So if you're I've known a lot of different kinds of artists that handle things very differently, and one of the common threads is that people start to panic, and they'll see the picture and be like, oh, I should be drawing, I should be drawing. The fact that they haven't started working yet is the thing that they end up like getting really concerned about. So they'll just panic and just start drawing something based on nothing. They won't actually have an idea yet, and they'll start working, and that can actually prove to be fortuitous in the sense of maybe it'll give you a rough idea of what it is that you want to do. And that's absolutely fine. You can do that, but don't let the sort of stress of feeling that get to you and make you feel as though you need to commit to something that you don't need to commit to. Never feel as though you should be pressured into doing anything. It doesn't matter whether it's drawing, it doesn't matter whether it's life or whatever have you. There's always going to be time, even if there is no time for something, then there's always a way of adapting. It's more important that you learn to adapt than it is that you learn how to do something right on the first try. Because doing something right on the first try is not something that you're really ever going to be able to accomplish in life. It's very rare. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter if it's drawing furry baps, whatnot. Not something you need to worry about. Just focus on being able to deal with situations as they arise. Focus on being able to alter drafts whenever they arise. Drawing is something that you should always enjoy. People often ask me, how do you get around artist block? How do you figure that out for yourself? And I mentioned this before. But personally, I don't really get artist block because my thing is obviously drawing little furry ladies here, and there's no shortage of those, and I enjoy drawing them. So I don't really run out of subject matter really easily, personally, but that does sort of tap into a core value, and that is you should always be enjoying what you're drawing. So if you find that you are forcing yourself in the drawing, like thinking to yourself, I should be practicing, I should be practicing, I should be practicing, gotta find something to draw. I don't want to draw, but I should be finding something to draw. If you're thinking like that, don't draw. Just don't. You should be enjoying it. Like playing the piano or something. I feel like I'm just repeating myself from like 5 different videos at this point. But if you're playing the piano or whatever, and you find yourself thinking, I really don't want to play the piano right now, then don't play the piano. Yes, practice is important. It's important to keep going. But at the same time, if you find that you're completely void of any desire to cultivate this hobby that you have, why do you have the hobby? And this is not to say that you should abandon drawing, you should abandon playing the piano, abandon practicing masturbating, whatever your hobby, whatever your dream ambition happens to be. You don't have to give it up, but if you're at that point where you're constantly having to reevaluate why you're doing these things, then my point would be maybe you should stop and think to yourself, what is it that I value most out of this hobby? Like, what am I getting out of it? What is the thing that I most derive pleasure from in this endeavor? Because that's just life in general. Like, there's a lot of things you could be doing, there's a lot of things you could be wasting your time on. You only get so much time here on Earth. So what are you going to waste it on? To me, I find great value in drawing these fur girls. Yes, I'm sure that posterity will remember me fondly. It's a great hero for doing so, right? What? No? Well, maybe you're wrong. Maybe you're wrong. But either way, I enjoy doing it one way or the other. So it quite frankly does not bother me to be doing it. So in your particular case, why are you doing that thing? Why are you practicing the violin? Why are you stimulating various parts of your body in various ways? As a hobby, not as an addiction, but as a hobby. Why are you doing these things? Does the improvement of these things actually cause you to feel as though you're gaining more from your life experience? Does it? Does stimulating your taint bring you that sort of pleasure? Does it? Rouge wants to know. And speaking of which, this draft is not really coming together the way that I thought it would. Since I'm doing a video, actually, that has made me almost do the thing that I warned you against at the beginning, and that as I was drawing just to draw. Like, this is not, I can tell already, this is not the final, this has nothing to do with anything. I should be focusing more. So to that end, I'll get rid of it. Because this is another thing I always tell people whenever they're doing drafts in these videos, is you don't have to worry about committing to anything. If something isn't working, just get rid of it. If you think to yourself, I don't really like that one too much, get rid of it. If it's something you're like, I don't know, I could maybe do better than this, then, set it to a layer and hide it. And you can turn it back on later and go, ooh, I'm glad I got rid of that. Or you can turn it back on later and go, ooh, I did something good, but I don't know what it is. Then at least you can reevaluate what it was that you were doing. Point being, whenever you're drawing, it's a personalized experience. I'm doing weird things with my hands. It's an experience that you're having with the canvas, and once you actually, like, you can stop. Like, it doesn't matter. You can not save the PSD, trash the whole project, and get up and go make a sandwich or whatever. It doesn't matter. Because the whole point of drawing is just to have the experience of having the subject and trying to do something with the subject. Just trying to examine it. I'm making this sound really weird, considering it's Rouge the Bat. But you get what I'm saying. Like, everything has form. Like, drawings have form, and if you're an artist and you sort of think this way, it's enjoyable to be able to draw things. It's said that a lot of the times, people really enjoy drawing old people for this reason. Not because, ooh, yeah, old people, yeah. Not like that, not like that. Heavens no, not like, well, maybe. But normally not like that. But normally the reason why it's fun to draw old people is simply because there's so much alterations in their form. Like, whether it's wrinkles in their skin, whether it's the way that their joints sort of are sharper and more defined than they would be in a young person. Whether it's anything like that, then it's a lot of fun to be able to draw them. And some people don't have that. They don't quite understand what that means. But if you do have that, then you should be able to nod and go, yeah, old people, yeah! Because you're a sick pervert. You're a deviant that should be locked up. Alright, but you get the idea. Okay, I'm doing it again. Okay. Whenever you're doing these little things, I'll say this about Sonic characters. Sonic characters tend to have these weirdly, very spherical heads. Like, they're almost perfect spheres. Like, if you look at one of their faces and just imagine, like, the ears and eyelashes or whatever extraneous things are, if you imagine them just being gone, they are perfect spheres. Which is supposed to be because it makes them easier to draw for little kids. Personally, the more basic of a shape something's whole head is, which it has to be a sphere, I can imagine it being like a box or something, I guess it could be, it makes it more difficult for me to draw. Like, it has to have something that's sort of breaking it apart, which is the reason why I did this image, because, it's not really a perfect sphere, it's sort of there, but everything's kind of, like, this is more of a half-moon shape, this is more of a three-quarter sphere, plus the triangles and everything else. Makes it at least a little bit more interesting. Alright, but I wanted to do something a little bit more dynamic with this one. I've been talking too much, so I haven't been concentrating as much on the actual draft process. I'm not going to take this too long anyways. About 15-minute mark, I'm going to stop. But I wanted to come up with something that was a bit more dynamic than that original picture. I probably won't include the legs, because I'm working on a much smaller canvas area. And speaking of which, I should do that right now. 1920 by 1080. Let's do this. People sometimes ask what resolution I'm working at. I'll do this. I'll change it to a 1920 by 1080 thing if I'm doing like a wallpaper sort of thing, and just put a 4 in front of it instead of a 1. So now it's 4920 by 2768. And then whenever you are done doing everything, then you can simply shrink that down to a 1920 and then export it, and you're done. Which is a good habit to be in, because again, you're working in raster rather than vector, so you can't scale up on raster. You can do that in vector, but you can't do it in raster. Okay. And you can see, because I did that, my brush size had to change, so I'm changing that with it. And I think I'm gonna take my density down to 60 while I'm thinking about it. Alright. So, more dynamic pose. something laying down, something flying. I really like the idea of her flying, because I gave her some much larger wings than usual. So I think something, well, hold on. Like I'm just trying to get something really rough. Like say, sometimes I'll just draw like blobs. Like they're not even like basic shapes, they're just sort of blobs. Just sort of a really rough idea. The head would actually be a little bit smaller than that. Yes, something a bit more like that. You can see what I'm doing. But it would be sort of like that. And actually I could get her legs in if I were doing it this way. So it could be something like that. I actually really like the idea of her arms actually being a part of her wings. Although I can tell you, as far as character design goes, if you're making like a cartoon or video game or something, that's a lot more limiting, so I can understand why they wouldn't do it. Because then they have to be in every single shot, and there's no real way of getting rid of them. So, anyways, you get the idea. So from this point forward, actually let me think of one more. I could do that flying. I could do it. Really, it could be more of a sort of a dynamic pose where she's sort of floating like this, and there's a little bit more foreshortening going on. If I take her arms down here, they would kind of shrink in the process. The only problem here is that since the character's head is so massive in terms of the rest of her body, it would do this, and would end up eating up a huge amount of space. And since she's a very feminine character, as opposed to, like usually if you're doing a masculine pose, you would do sort of a looking up pose like this, like chin here, and blah, 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 blah. And that's more of a power shot, whereas looking down is more feminine because it causes the features to be constrained into a V shape, which makes them look a bit more narrower, It makes them look more narrow, and as a result, it gives more of an impression of femininity. You get the idea. So, it can be sort of like that. So, there's no real advice I can give as far as doing drafts go. Other than, well, there's plenty of advice I can give as far as making drafts, but as far as like getting them, like doing them right the first time, forget about it. Like I screw that up all the time. And even this one has lots of problems, and I'm not going to be using this one. But practice makes perfect, etc. And as I've said before, variable practice makes perfect, not perfect practice makes perfect. That doesn't make any sense. Like I've been over that before. You can check out my How Draw Good video I did if you want to hear more about that as far as how to draw in general. But drawing with blobs is a great way to get started. So that's sort of what I've been doing here. Like you can tell it's sort of like this is the general area where a limb is going to be. If you ever seen, there's a lot of professional painters. I can't really paint, but there are people that are absolutely amazing at it. And you'll often see their original drafts, and it's just like a bunch of lines. It'll be like this, like there's a bunch of lines, and there's like some crud over here. Like, these are the trees. I know what this is. I'm the artist that's drawing it, so I know what these motions mean. And as a result, this is where the trees are, and oh, this will be like a little area, and this will be the water. And then I will draw a child here later. A child will be right here. And then they'll do like a little thing like this, where it's just for them. It will never show up in the painting, but it's just like a little reminder. Here he is. This is where he's going to be. And then the final result will look like an old Baroque painting. It'll just be this amazing painting. Looks ultra realistic. But the original draft looks just like this. So, whenever you're doing your drafts, don't worry about it. Like all the ones that I've already done, they're gone forever. I don't even remember what they look like. I blew them out of my head. With my monstrous amount of pre-recording, sorry. Alright, that's it for now. On to the post-recording, where hopefully I will have more luck, and be recording at 2 frames per second. That's why you don't do live recordings for a full drawing. I did that one time, and unfortunately I managed to do that one fast, but nope, this is what they are. So, on to post-commentary Eli. So long, everyone. Alright. Time for the cool Eli. I'm the cool Eli because I don't have to work. Well, this is technically work, but I don't have to draw, in other words. By the way, I'm going to be drinking this Sprite Zero? Yeah, Sprite Zero. Actually, the Sprite Zeros don't really... They taste almost exactly like Sprite to me. I imagine some other people are like, oh, it tastes like garbage. And they'll... Because they're like 8 men or something. But, you know, for me, they're fine. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Alright. I remember... Like, this is like 2 days later, nearly. I remember saying something about, feel free to delete all your drafts, because it just doesn't matter, and, you know, stuff like that. But this is the first draft that I attempted after doing that, and it's also the last draft that I attempted after doing that, so... You don't necessarily have to do that, but, you know, you can. Plus, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are like, he spent all that time doing the live commentary, and he started out with a blank canvas. Like, he accomplished nothing. Yes, that is true. But another nice thing about post-commentary is that I can actually have the microphone in front of my face. Like, my setup is that I have a monitor, another monitor, and then I have my giant-ass tablet. So I don't have any desk space. I had to install a tray for my keyboard. I hate that tray. I cannot stand it. What was I just saying? But whenever I'm drawing, I have to obviously be leaning over that, so there's also no room for a microphone, which drives me absolutely crazy. I guess technically I did do 2 drafts here. Whenever you draw stuff, like someone laying down, or, you know, something like that, it's really weird, because... I guess it's because... I know what it is, but... I've mentioned this before, but if you're working on a tablet, if you're... really anywhere, if you're working on a table, a flat table, then often you will draw at a skew, because you're trying to draw based on... Like, you're visualizing a flat area, right? But because your perspective, your eyes... are looking at this area at a skew naturally because, you know, perspective. You end up drawing at a perspective. And the same thing can be true if you're drawing, you know, on a tablet or something. In my case, I have this sort of tendency to sort of lean to one side whenever I'm drawing. I don't know why, I just kind of do that sometimes. And that creates a lot of problems. And plus my tablet is big enough and, you know, slanted enough. Like, I can't tilt it forward any more than it already is. So I naturally sort of have to correct for that too. So whenever I'm streaming especially, I'll actually look up at OBS and try to look at that, because that's a flat surface. So I'm sort of drawing at a tilt, but I'm also looking up at that to try to fix both things at the same time. Drawing's a mess. You shouldn't do it. Drawing's just terrible. It's not worth the time. It's not worth the time. Alright. But I guess I'll talk a little bit about the animation. If you don't know, which I don't know, who in the world's watching this who's watching this that doesn't already watch videos like this on my channel? Well, whatever. But I did a video before this, before I released the animation. It's like animating bat tits or some stupid name like that. And, but whenever you're drawing someone laying down or something like this, and you have to do a lot of corrections in the process because of that reason. In that video, I was showing off what I was doing as far as animating goes. So if you want to actually see me animate, you go watch that video. As far as, if you're interested in the process behind creating animations that I go through. As I was saying that, I'm no expert in animating. I'm getting better over time, whether I like it or not, which I don't. I don't like it at all. It's terrible. I hate learning. But if you want that, that's where it is. I'm kind of considering the idea of just going through and watching the animation that's commentating over it, but I don't think I'll do that. But I will say that in the process of drawing Rouge, as I said before, one of the problems that I ran into is I just don't really like Rouge's design. I would rather her be a little bit more like this. And that's the point of doing this image, this correction process. Rouge herself, it wasn't that bad. As far as animating the cartoon goes, most of the problem came from Aaron and Danny, because I was just drawing them as just people, of course. And here I'm shrinking down her. I'm trying to get her proportions correct. I'll briefly say this. A lot of people usually comment on how much they like my drawings for whatever reasons. There's various reasons. Usually I find the thing that attracts people the most to how I draw is my proportions. And I've commented on this many times, but there's a proportional ratio that's very appealing that people don't always get right. Whenever I'm drawing, like, I really like drawing women just for this particular reason. Because it's kind of fun to try to get the proportions right, because proportions with women are way more exaggerated than they are with men. With men, you can, like, we have our own proportions, especially if you're, like, extremely fit, you spend your entire life in a gym. Then you sort of end up with a more exaggerated feature, but women have it more naturally. With men, though, especially, it's more of a straight, kind of a V shape almost. Like, you go from the shoulders down to the legs, and it's just one thing. You know, it's kind of boring. It's not too bad, but, you know, it's not something that's really that interesting. Whenever I was in high school, I drew the shit out of guys. Like, I drew superheroes and nonsense like that constantly. So I definitely had my fill of that. Women, way more interesting for that reason. Like I said before, it's interesting to draw shapes and, like, details and things like that as well. I imagine a very curvaceous old woman would be fun to draw. Maybe. Or maybe horrifying. Maybe horrifying. Who can say exactly? But anyways. There's a very particular set of ratios that I usually have whenever I'm drawing women. And it's kind of hard to dial in and get it right. I would say that probably more than my line work. Even though apparently my line work is known for being pretty good on its own. More than that, I would say it's more the proportions that I aim for. Because, like, the way that I create my lines is not particularly amazing or anything like that. I have pretty good control, but it's not like it's groundbreaking. So I would say it's more form. It's more what I'm known for. It's just creating form. Sonic characters and things like that work really well for that because they sort of fit into this... The industry term is short stack, right? They kind of fit into that sort of territory, a short stack sort of thing, where they're not realistic. They have exaggerated proportions, but they're not so unrealistic that they fall into the uncanny valley because they are working within an existing style. If you saw them in real life, they would be way beyond uncanny valley. They would be terrifying. But because they are in their own style, then it's not really that upsetting or anything like that. So, like, Sonic characters work pretty well for that. It's just that I hate their circular heads. I really detest the way that they are designed. To my understanding, again, I'm not a Sonic person. I don't know about things. So, if there are people in the comment section that are like, oh, I fucking love Sonic, I can't wait to watch a video about a Sonic character being drawn. He's saying incorrect things about Sonic. I'm banging on my table. He's saying incorrect things about Sonic. Yeah, I don't care. Like, I don't care. Don't bother my ass, none. Don't bother my ass. But those proportions generally work out for me. It's just that there's a lot of detailing as far as their actual character designs go. I do not care for at all. Not in the least. Let me bring up a picture of Rouge, actually. Because comparing it to this, like right now, there's some obvious things to go across here. But this little things like the actual character model for Rouge, like, for example, obviously, with the way that I'm drawing her, her, you know, cheeks are way more kind of furled out. She doesn't have a very obvious central shape to her. Like, the actual character model, very circular. Like, she's just an orb sitting on like a human body that has dwarfism, basically. It's pretty weird looking. It's like that. that circular head is so weird. Like mine has little tufts of hair coming out the top. The ears probably occupy a bit more space as far as not looking like they are attached to a sphere, if that makes any sense. Mine, it looks more like she has actual ears rather than just having a basic head shape where someone spot welded a pair of ears to her skull. Another thing is I don't really particularly care for Rouge's like heavy makeup. Like if you've seen my drawings, you notice I never use lipstick. There's a reason for that. I don't like using mascara for similar reasons. Some of that is just that if you try to draw lips, especially things like lips, in real life lips blend, and if you're a woman and you're applying makeup, then you know that blending is important. Like, it has to look natural. Otherwise, you're just going to end up looking like a clown, right? So, it's kind of common, especially whenever you're doing line work, for people to make the mistake of physically drawing the lips, like drawing the outline of the lips, which you never, ever want to do. If you're going to do that, you do it either with extremely fine shading, or, like, if you're just doing black and white. Like, very, very controlled shading, or hatching, probably not even hatching, probably stifling would probably work a little bit better. Either that, or just use color. Like, even if you're working black and white, you know, just use, like, a very light gray or something. Just something where you can actually blend it correctly. And, much later on, I'm going to be doing, some blending here, of course, once we get to the color stage. But, even then, the way that I shade, I put down a hard... Like, I usually go tritone. In other words, base layer, dark, light. I've tried painting before. The Android 21 video that I have up is an example of that. And that one was more just me showing off I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to paint, but I'm not particularly great at it. And of course a lot of people are like, oh no, that's fine. Like, I really like the way that turned out. But it's still obvious that I don't really paint that often. I much prefer to just do tritone, which is much simpler. Painting is a very different skill set. Way more difficult. Way more difficult. Very difficult. Very different skill sets. But I just like the look better. I just like the general look of tritone a lot better. And if you remember that particular video, if you watched that one before, I said that much like how in... I think this is the example I did. Much like how in Dragon Ball, Vegeta gave up on just trying to replicate everything Goku was doing and decided, you know what, I'm going to find my own path. And I think that's more of a marketing thing. They're trying to make everyone have individual kind of unique skill sets and whatnot, more than Toriyama has given them. Because Toriyama has this bad habit of everyone has the same exact thing, right? Like, everyone uses the same attacks, everyone transforms the same way, and so forth and so on. If they transform at all, for that matter. So, Vegeta getting his dumb... What's that stupid name? The evolution form? What a stupid fucking name for form. It's just a callback to a Super Vegeta form. Was it really that bad to just call it Super Blue? Super Blue sounds so much better, too. Well, anyways, but the point being inside that video, I was saying, instead of just trying to chase painting, instead of trying to do the thing that looks quote-unquote impressive, you know, everyone wants to paint. Instead of doing that, I decided maybe I'll find my own super version of myself. So I don't know what that is yet, but I'll figure it out. That sort of thing. So the way that I've kind of been pursuing that lately, and it kind of started with the animation. Well, I'll take that back. It didn't start with the animation, but it's something I was definitely thinking about at the time. I started out in the very first few frames trying to do this, but it ended up being way too much work. Is you sort of see the way that I'm creating my line work here, where there's a lot of variation. Like, just looking at, like, her, like the side of her little tufts on her cheek, for example. It starts out a very fine line and then grows towards the neck as a very, very wide line. That sort of thing. I was doing that in animation, but it just took too long. And plus, the more strokes that you create in Vector, the more bog it creates in trying to render things out. It took a long time trying to get this stupid hand to actually look correct. I mean, whenever I'm drawing hands, I often look at my own hand. I'll just hold it out and just try to do the positions, but sometimes sometimes you really just need a photograph. But the thing about working with like photographs and things like that is that especially if you're doing a little cartoon character like this, then you can end up accidentally replicating something a little bit too realistically. And as a result, it can look very jarring. So the way that I usually do it is I just try to imagine it. You know, I have said time and time again, there's nothing at all wrong with tracing for the most part. Like you don't want to be tracing photographs like line by line and then like screwing a cartoon character's head on top of it or anything like that. It's very obvious you're doing it. But as far as referencing goes, I am all for referencing, believe me. Whenever that nonsense about Toyotaro, he was supposedly heavily referencing a cover from a Captain America comic, I think? It had Captain America on it. I don't remember if it's from a Captain America comic, though. But people were giving grief about that. And every artist that ever was came out of the woodwork and said, no, you idiots. That's not how that works. Because if you're an artist, you immediately know, no, it's just reference work. That doesn't make any sense. You can't blame someone for doing reference work. But there's a big difference between using something as reference and actually just straight up replicating and stealing it. Like I remember... was it Ozzy Osbourne's kid? Got in trouble for straight up just tracing pages out of Bleach, I think it was. And that was too overt. That was too much. If you go look at those like side-by-side comparisons, that is straight up just like following the lines, and he was just doing that to the point that he wasn't following his own character models anymore. Like he had characters and he wasn't even using their models, the way that he designed them. He wasn't using it correctly because he was so concerned with trying to replicate the images that he was looking at from Bleach. So that's bad tracing. You don't want to do that. There's tracing and then there's reference work. And if you're wondering, well, what are the definitions for it? How do you determine what is reference, what is tracing? You don't. Like, that's just the thing. Whatever you're drawing like this, like a single line stroke can determine whether a picture looks bad or good. Like, it's just very, very difficult. So, trying to define whether something is right or wrong in terms of that is really, really up to the individual. So if you want to make the argument of there's no right or wrong in it or whatever, I guess you can. Like, I'm not gonna start an internet war on that, but... Anyways, point being, no problem at all as far as referencing goes. But whenever you're doing that, you have to have that sort of hand rule in mind. You know, you don't want it to be so overt that this is a photograph, that it clashes with the thing that you're drawing. So that's my point. By the way, I drew Rouge's little tail back there. I love her little tail. But, even on her actual character model, they never dare actually show her tail. Like, it's always covered in fabric. It's covered in the same fabric that her ass is covered in. That black shit, right? And there's a reason for that. And it's because, imagine that little tail that stubs poking out using her actual skin tone. Because she has, like, her white fur, and then she has the dumb Caucasian lady skin. Like, it's fucking weird. Like, she has that. It's like looking at an actual human butt that has a little stubby, like, no hair covered tail sticking out the back of it. It is so weird looking. So, making her entirely white, making her actually have fur on her body instead of having parts of her be a Caucasian supermodel and having the other parts be a bat, you know, that fixes a whole lot. So, I end up giving her a little white tail there, and it looks just great. It looks just great, because that's exactly how she should look. It's almost like this entire concept is a much better design than her actual design, because someone was trying too hard to make her look sexy. It's almost like that's true. I'm saying that's true. That's exactly what I'm saying. But anyways, alright. I got really off track. I was trying to say something about the cartoon, but I guess there's not too much to talk about in regards to it. I drew it, it exists, and it is done. Yes. I really got tired of drawing Dan's Stegosaurus plates. I'm glad that I made the reference, but holy shit, I got tired of drawing those things. And I don't think that Aaron or Dan have seen it yet, or no one's really made reference to it. I was trying to give them the animation, because that's the thing. Like, there's tons of Game Grumps animated. I was trying to give it to them. And I sent an email to Aaron, I think 2 or 3 times. He never answered, he never replied. I don't know if he even checks his email. If he's anything like ordinary content creators, he probably sees the titles and just ignores them because he gets them so consistently, which I don't blame him for. So, I did that. You can't send messages on Twitter to any of their accounts. They have that locked out. Like, unless they're following you, then you're not allowed to contact them. So, I can't do that. I looked up their business email, which is on their YouTube account, and sent an email via that, saying, I'm almost done with an animation. Can you just give me some information on what I'm supposed to do in regards to giving this to you? Like, is there anything that you require out of this? And I never got any response back in regards to that either, so just... I have no idea if they even know that it exists, which they probably get tons of these things all the time, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But one way or the other, it exists for all the world to see. Maybe one day they'll use it for the channel, I don't know. So if you're wondering about that, that's my story in regards to that. I tried, didn't get anywhere, so I gave up. So that's my story. But I hope if they eventually see it, I hope they'll enjoy it. I hope Dan actually appreciates his Stegosaurus plating. Because that was a pain in the ass. There are no Stegosaurus characters, but I figured I'd just give that to him one way or the other. I know that his favorite character, it seems like his favorite character is Blue. So at first I was thinking about doing something in regards to that, but Aaron's character, Sonic obviously, because I needed him to be Sonic because certain scenes didn't work, if that was not the case. He was going to be Blue, obviously, so I couldn't have 2 blue characters standing side by side, so that's why that happened. The audio itself, I've gone over this several times. A lot of people just straight up just pick up the audio and just plug it in, and they just use that. With this one, the audio was so disjointed. Like, unless you've actually seen the LP, you would not know this. But the audio that I sampled was not from 1 episode. It was not from 2 episodes. It wasn't from 3. It was from, like, every other part. There was, like, 1 line of dialogue or 2 that I lifted from every single episode. And I had to take a huge sample of that. It was something like 5 minutes of audio that I ended up picking up. There's some that I wanted to use, but I couldn't find an excuse to use. Like there's one about Dan, he was talking as though he were the crocodile guy, whatever his name is. I don't care what his name is. But he's like, if you drink my watering hole, I will drag you into the lake. I will do a death spin. It kind of went on like that. But there's just lots of little things that I never got to use. But, hold on. Someone's in my Discord. Stop. God damn it, it fucked me up. People are shitposting my Discord, and I'm looking down, and that's kind of pissing me off, because I'm trying to record, and they're always doing that, and they're not deleting any of their shit, which they should be. So if I see that again, we're going to have a problem. Now, what the fuck was I saying? Oh, the audio. So whenever I was going through and watching the entire... That's one of the things that people don't really appreciate. You have to go back and you have to watch the whole thing, because you're trying to gather as much material as you possibly can. So whenever I was going through and sampling things, just trying to find stuff that I could use to resample as funny dialogue, a lot of things were just them just sort of panting and just, ooh, Rouge, and then that was the only thing that they really said. So I had to take a lot of material from that and sort of stitch it together in a way that almost made sense. So, the vinyl animation, the audio is meant to try to tell a story, mainly through visuals, but some of it is sort of pieced together so it sort of makes some sense, some sort of coherent sense as far as a progression of events or progression of logic goes. If I just used the audio straight up without any editing, then it would not have worked at all. Like, there would be no comedy. It would just be sort of disjointed, weird dialogue. So I kind of imagine, like, when I came up with the idea of I gotta do some sort of animation that will expand my range of influence a little bit, because the way that online communities work, there are little circles that people operate in, and then that's it. Like, it's kind of hard to move in and out of them. So ever so often you do have to make something that is sort of intersects with the community you don't normally interact with. Game Grumps and Two Best Friends Play, which is usually the one I'm most associated with, do have a lot of intersections, but they're not straight overlaps. So I thought, well, this one will be safe. I won't have to worry too much about the online community is not meshing well, and not meshing well with my existing fan base and things like that. So I chose them, and I started going through and trying to find things that I could do animation parodies of. And there was just too many that had already been taken. Like, there's lots of little cute little moments, but either... Like, this is a problem. A lot of people will sometimes suggest things like, oh, this was funny, and then I'll go look at it, and there's nothing to do a cartoon of, because it's straight up just visual. It's just visual humor. Like, the joke is already there. By the way, if I ever pause on these things, it's usually because I'm listening to music, and I just kind of lose interest for about 30 seconds. I'm like, yeah, this. Anyways, sorry, I started thinking about this other track that I was listening to. I listened to people comment on it. I gotta get sidetracked. I was about to start... My taste in music is really eclectic. I kind of go all over the place, and that's usually the thing people comment most about whenever I'm doing my streams. Because I'll go from, like, country music to, like, metal, and then classical music to rap, and then, you know, to, like, pop music from modern day or something. Like, it's really weird. I know it, but, you know, this is how I am. Anyways, but sampling all the tracks and everything is kind of a pain in the ass. It just takes a lot of work to be able just to get that down, and that's before the animation even starts. Yeah, but a lot of people were suggesting things that are purely visual, like they're already visual jokes, so there's no reason to actually animate them. I'm noticing mistakes that I made in the drawing right now. Oh, that bugs me. Oh well. Drawing's done. No drawing is ever perfect. You just have to try to make it as perfect as you can while you're drawing it, which I did not do. I fucked up something pretty major. But I'm not going to tell you what it is, because then that'll be the only thing people want to comment and look at. So I'm just not going to mention it at all. That's another lesson that you should remember for yourself. This goes for anything in life, by the way, not just drawing. If you make a mistake, if you have flaws, do not volunteer the information. Not because, like, I made this mistake when I was younger, because my idea was, well, then I'm not being honest. But that's not the case. And it's not as though you're lying by doing this, but you're also protecting other people from the mistake of, whenever you are... Like, if you have some sort of weird problem in regards to your work, you know, whether, like, if you're working at a grocery store or something, and you're, you know, setting up mod, and no one knows what the hell that is. You're stocking items, say it this way. You're stocking items, you're putting the things in the shelves, and you don't face the stuff correctly or something, or you lose track of what you're doing, and you forget to face certain items. In other words, you bring the things with the expiration dates that are the closest to being expired up to the front, and put all the stuff you just got in the back, that's facing. If you do something like that, and you kind of forget, don't volunteer that information. Like, if someone notices, like, hey, this stuff isn't faced correctly, they'll go, oh, that's me, I'm a fuck up. like, even if you did do that, and you do that ever so often or whatever, and it's not really that big of a deal in the grand scope of things, if you point out aspects to who you are to people, that's the mentality that they have of you. So if you... like, this even goes for things that aren't mistakes. They're just things, like aspects of your personality. If you say, yeah, people know me as being a funny guy or something, then people will start looking for that. And this kind of goes... oh, this is so weird. It goes hand in hand with, like, dating advice and stuff, too. Where if you mention one thing, then people start to look at you with that perspective, that lens in mind, and they're looking for it. Which people use to great positive effects, and to manipulate other people, which is a shitty thing to do. Like, it's just a very vast topic. But you get the idea. Whenever you're talking to other people, just don't volunteer negative information. Because if that's the case, especially if they don't know you, even if they do know you pretty well, their primary reaction from that point on will be they will be looking for it. And they will just kind of consider you to be a fuck-up if the first thing that you tell them is that you are a fuck-up. Even if there are plenty of other things that you think in your head, it's obvious that I'm doing all these other positive things, right? People won't notice those things. Human beings naturally gravitate towards remembering and noticing negative things, like negative memories, so forth and so on. And that's just an evolutionary thing. It has helped us to survive, to be able to look at things and go, I remember this negative thing. This hyena jumped out of a bush to maul my face off, and it ate my baby, or whatever. And if you do that, more people spamming my Discord, that if you're like that, here's my reflection, by the way, really makes that water pop out, doesn't it? I realize I never touch the water. I let the reflection do all the work. But if you... but our ancestors, just by remembering things negatively, like if you remember positive things, like, oh, my baby didn't die today, that doesn't help you from an evolutionary perspective. But if you remember, oh yes, hyenas eat all my children if I go near these bushes over here or whatever, then you stop looking at, you're like, fuck that bush, I ain't going near that bush. And as a result, your babies propagate and survive the next generation. They carry forth your, negative personality from that point forward. Right? That's how it works. Good old hyenas. So, people think that way. Whenever you tell them something, like, I've been over this many times before, but people think of themselves as being the main characters of reality, which is a very negative thing. You really shouldn't do that. It's important to have empathy, but people are sort of just naturally like this. They think of themselves as being the most important person in the universe, and they look at everyone else and see them as being two-dimensional characters. Like, they're just cartoons. Like, oh, ha ha ha, he... I can't even think of, like, a negative thing. Like, people that laugh at people that have, like Down syndrome, or, they have some sort of debilitating thing like dwarfism or whatever. Is that the appropriate thing to say these days, dwarfism? I can't remember what the actual medical term is. It's been a while. Apparently it's in vogue now to say little people instead of dwarfism, I think. It's been a while, though. It kind of changes. It has changed a lot since I was a kid, that's for sure. It changed a lot since the days of Willow. Out of the way, Peck! I love that line. We used to make fun of my mom's like 4'11", so we used to call her Peck Mama. Anyways. But people look at one another like that. They think of themselves as being these incredibly deep, three-dimensional people with all sorts of inner conflicts and, ways of looking at the universe, and just, like, they're so complex and, they're magical. They're just amazing people, right? Even if they don't like themselves, they think to themselves, well, I'm a very deep person. There's a lot of conflict, and things to look at in regards to understanding me. I'm the same way. I'm not immune to that. Whenever people, fence, whatever, bricks and fences, I nod, okay, but I'm an actual person, remember? But it's very natural to treat people as cartoon characters, especially online personalities, for that matter. Uh, so, whenever people look at other people, I'm trying to retain my train of thought as desperately as I can. Whenever people look at other people, they will remember the things that stand out to them the most, and those are usually negative traits. So, if you point out, this thing is wrong that I did, then that's what they're going to think of from that point on. It's this very careful balance, because on one hand, you don't want to come across as being someone that, I do everything right. I'm right all the time about everything. I never fuck up. Because that's bad. But you also don't want to, you have to leverage it against, I also don't want to come across as being a screw-up. Because if you actually do admit to your faults, people will remember it. And this is a problem I've had with a lot of people, just in general life, is being expected to do both at the same time. Because I'm very forthcoming with, I'm doing this wrong, I'm doing this wrong, I'm doing this wrong. Especially in regards to my work, in regards to drawing, I'm especially like that. But at the same time, people don't appreciate that enough. It's just human nature. They will take that admission, and, I've had people say this, say that, oh, he's an idiot, apparently. Because I freely confess too much of my own shortcomings, thinking, well, they will appreciate the fact that I did this. They'll appreciate the fact that I told them straight up, this is the thing that I didn't do 100% correctly. And as a result, they ended up biting me the butt because I was too honest. So, in regards to marketing yourself, in regards to doing what you should be doing, always bear that in mind. It kind of goes hand in hand with dating, too, in a weird way. Because the problem I've always had with dating is, this is getting kind of weirdly, really off topic, I guess, but I'm still single, so I still think about this quite a bit. I'm not too concerned with dating. I've always kind of preferred being alone anyways, in case anyone's wondering. If anyone's new watching this. But a lot of dating, and this is the reason why I never really got too much into it when I was younger, a lot of it is just being selfish. A lot of it is just purely being extremely shallow and a shitty person. In high school, the big thing, the big cliche whenever you're growing up is girls care about personality and men only care about looks, stuff like that. And as you get older, you realize, oh no, women are absolutely obsessed with looks. It's just that most men are ugly. That's pretty much it. And of course, you get into that shit that assholes talk about. The whole 80-20 nonsense, and you start, that, even mentioning that, I'm sure some people are like, ugh, I know, I'm the same way. Because it's one of those things where, yeah, it's technically true, the whole 80-20 thing rule of, 80% of women go for the top 20% of men, and, nonsense like that. Well, it's not nonsense, it is true, but just bringing it up and talking about it is kind of cringy on its own, right? So I typically don't really linger on it too much, But that is true, and it's true because that's how people think in regards to dating. The whole 0 to 10 rule of attractiveness, that if you're a 6, you typically are looking for a 7 or above. But if someone is an 8 or above, you may not even bother because, well, I'm not going to have a chance one or the other. That's the reason why I never really got into dating, is because that whole thing, to me, felt very unnatural. And it felt sleazy, and kind of just nasty, and I thought, that seems like something a shitty person would do, to think of people like that. And it wasn't until I got older that I have sort of come to terms with, well, that's just part of it. Is whenever you're first meeting someone for the first time, you can't see their personality, you can't see their interests, you can't see whether you are compatible with them in terms of desires, interests, and so forth and so on. The only thing that you have to go by are just the extremely basic information. And that comes down to things like looks, income, general behavior, etc. So whenever you meet someone for the first time, it's this extremely careful balance of you don't want to divulge too much too early, or else that's what's in their head. Because that's just how people are. They can only think of you from that point on. Like, if you freely admit whenever you first come out of the gate and are like, yeah, I'm a screw-up, I do all these things wrong, I'm fucking up in this regard, blah, blah, blah. That's what they see from that point forward. Kind of the same thing works in regards to attracting women, too, for guys, is if you never mention, yeah, I'm interested in you in terms of being a romantic interest or whatever, a lot of women it will never click for them. Like, they'll never even consider it. But the moment that you say that, they start thinking about it, even if they would otherwise have never thought of you as being an interest whatsoever. You know, they don't think that way. But the moment that you do mention that, then that sort of opens the gates, and maybe you won't have a chance at all, of course, but it will be something that they will think about whenever they see you, which could be very negative if they want absolutely nothing to do with you one way or the other, right? So, just in regards to anything, whether here I'm kind of fudging with the reflection. I didn't realize that I was going to have so little space to work with, but I wanted more of a reflection. But eventually I kind of just gave up on it. But in regards to marketing yourself, in regards to, like, even dating, there's a very careful balance between that, of being honest versus trying to market yourself versus just trying to be a good person in the process. It's very difficult. It's a social skill that I never quite perfected. I never even got close to perfecting it, I would say. Something that I've always struggled with. And to this day, I really don't feel comfortable with it. Like, it's one of the reasons why I became self-employed. Because I always detested doing things like making, resumes, and, you know, going on dates, and things like that. Is because I don't like touting myself. I don't like building myself up and giving myself a hand job. Ooh, I'm great at this. I'm amazing. I hate doing that. That is not the kind of person I am. And my inner mentality, which is wrong, but I've always had it and probably always will, is if I actually am worth my salt in regards to whatever it is, whether it's drawing talent, whether it's, here we are, final image, or, you know, how desirable I am, or whatever stupid thing it is, then it should be something that speaks for itself, which is not true at all. Like, you should not have that attitude, but it's just something that I've always dealt with. So in regards to the one thing that I'm looking at in this image that I'm like, ooh, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's really bothering me personally, I'm not gonna tell you, because then you're like, oh yeah, bleh. And even now, since I've done that, and I'm not gonna tell you, you're all gonna start making up things that aren't even wrong with the image. Like, there's nothing wrong with it at all. But you'll start making it up regardless. Because that's just how people are. And that's why you need multiple drafts whenever you're to come across to the theme of this video again. That's why you need multiple drafts in regards to doing any sort of art project. That's why it's okay to completely abandon drafts in the process. Because no one is perfect, but if you can work on it beforehand as much as possible, that's really going to shine through in the final product. So, alright. That goes for animation too. Animation sucks. Alright, so hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoy me rambling. This is generally what art gripes are. If you're not aware, this is the first time video for you. It's just me talking about general life things and how it intersects with drawing and just general production. Alright, so keep trying, keep doing your variable practicing. That is to say, just trying new things even if it doesn't relate to drawing. Expand your horizons, and don't feel bad about screwing up. Like, there's that one thing that's really bugging me right now, but I'll start thinking about it soon enough. So, hope you guys enjoyed it. Enjoyed this Rouge redesign, which is far superior to the original in every way. Just saying, just saying. Alright, see you guys later.